Hello there. I'm Dr. Gareth Millward, and I'm slightly drunk. The following episode was recorded with Steve Gaynor of the Fullbright Company, in which he discusses a number of plot points related to the adventure game Gone Home. The adventure game Gone Home is a delightful experience, but also requires one to know very little about the story involved, as this enhances the gaming experience, for there are a number of twists, not M. Night Shyamalan twists, but twists nonetheless. The following episode of Backseat Designers contains spoilers. Please, if you are worried by spoilers, do not listen to this episode until you have played Gone Home by the Fullbright Company. It is currently available on Steam for £14.99. You can convert that into your own local currency and see that that is a bargain for what is one of the best games of the past few years. That is Gone Home by the Fullbright Company. Have a good evening.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Backseat Designers Season 4 inaugural episode. Yay, woo, flags waving, children cheering for no reason whatsoever, because children don't listen to this show. Anyway, rambling aside.
They shouldn't. So if they do, please turn it off right now.
Turn it off. Fuck, shit, cunt! Now turn it off. Also, this podcast is uncensored. This podcast is uncensored and unscripted and full of libelous shit. Now, all of this aside, I am Trolls, the Space Quest historian thingy, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, as always, my friend Frederick Olsen. Hi, Fred.
Hello. Hello.
His balls dropped finally. And a person named Dr. Gareth Millwood.
Hello.
That's his answer to everything. And we are today joined by a very special guest whom I should probably say hi to so he feels comfortable interjecting into the conversation we're about to have.
I think that ship has sailed already.
Yeah, probably. Actually, I think he logged off. Nice. So what remains is now the ghost of Steve Gaynor of Fullbright Entertainment. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. This is like the first day back at school. For all of us. We haven't podcasted since November last year. And I guess it's fair to say, if you would agree, that we've been kind of skirting around the issue for quite a while. We had our little Adventure X special, which was kind of a stopgap for us not being able to figure out what to do for season 4 of this podcast. And so pray tell, what prompted us to actually get back in the swing of things? No one knows.
Things. Well, I mean, we did have some cool people who, for some reason or other, got in touch with us, for whatever reason. And I believe you talked to Steve about him potentially being on your show, the Space Quest Historian podcast, and you suggested that he should come on to this. And saying yes to that was probably the mistake of his life, but we'll get back to that later. But I guess what we wanted to do for this season is to follow the red thread that we kind of had going in our 3 specials where we talked about the state of the industry, not necessarily by talking about the business side of game development all the time, but having a guest there to kind of not have an interview with us, but kind of have a conversation about a given subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Gareth hardly speaks. He lets his soundboard do the talking. So yeah, that's exactly right. We've talked to a number of people, and Steve was kind enough to accept our invitation as the inaugural guest.
And Gareth is the Mr. Bean of the postmodern society.
I don't know what that means, but I'll take it.
I hope you were awarded that title in a ceremony by Mr. Bean himself, passing on the mantle.
Yeah, he takes a sword out and sort of hits you on both of the shoulders. It's it's
the wrong
moving.
way, the wrong way round. He actually hits you with the sword. So anyway, enough about Mr. Bean.
On the glorious return of Seat Designers for season 4. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on the kickoff episode, be part of the convo.
What the hell was that?
It's a soundboard. Let's assume.
No, Skype just fucking crashed on me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
For once, that was not my fault.
He thinks he's talking to himself right now. But anyway, of course, for those of you who don't know, Steve and his company, Fullbright, did the game Gone Home, which Trolls and I played. Well, we attempted to play it for a BSD Plays way back when we were still drinking while doing these things. And it's a really interesting game, not only because it's really well put together, if I may say so, but because it kind of does something interesting to you as the player by completely subverting the expectations that you may have of it. So that's what Steve is here to talk about with us.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys first. How would you characterize the way that your expectations were subverted?
That's a good one. See,
I would. Well, there is one obvious one, I think, which is that you have a lot of clues throughout the game that at some point the ghost of the uncle, I believe, is gonna pop out of a corner somewhere. But that never happens. It's something that's alluded to having caused disturbances in the life of this family, but he never actually appears as a ghost on screen. So that it also kind of mechanically resembles a game like Amnesia. First name drop of the season, everyone. I mentioned this game a lot, but it
That's
never
totally appropriate here.
Yeah, yes, and it never actually lives up to that story-wise. It's out to tell the player something different.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but the very first prototype of Gone Home was made in the Amnesia level editor that they released. And you can actually play that prototype. I sent it to the creators of Amnesia after the game came out because they had seen that I had mentioned that at some point, and they hosted it on their site. So you can actually play the first prototype of Gone Home as an Amnesia whatever user-made story. So yeah, the similarities are not totally coincidental. I guess part of what you're pointing out, the whole thing of like, yeah, they talk about a ghost, but a ghost never appears, is something I thought about really like explicitly when we were working on the game, which is just how do I put this? In games, like everything that's put into a game is artificial. You know, like you have to build, like as a developer, you have to build everything that goes on screen, no matter what it is. And so if you're making a movie, it's way cheaper and easier to set something in the modern day and just have people wear their normal clothes and like be in a normal house and talk about stuff, and for that to be the drama. And it's way more expensive to have the movie be about ghost special effects and all that kind of stuff.
I think you just described the British film industry. Is that right, Gary?
Wow.
There's a lot of like that Eddie Izzard bit where he says, well, British films are like two people sitting around a table and one of them is arranging matches. That's
so season 4 is just going to be about racism, is it?
Yeah, and the next James Bond film, 00 doing the dishes.
Sorry to interrupt. Please keep going.
No, it's all good. I mean, yeah, like 00 doing the dishes would be a much easier film to make than 00 flips a car over and whatever.
That should be his new nickname. 00, hello, sir. 00 flips a car over at your service.
These are just 10-second movies, and that's all there is to them.
But so like in games, it's kind of the default mode to say like, well, why, there probably is a ghost. There probably is a zombie. There probably is, some sort of thing that wouldn't exist in our real world. And so one of the challenges of Gone Home is to weirdly like walk that back in the opposite direction and just say to the player, like, no, this game really does just take place in like our world that works the same way our world does, as far as, like I characterized it to other people I knew at the time that I was like, if you're in a game and you find a note that says like, I saw a ghost, you're like, oh shit, maybe there's a ghost. But if you went to like, your aunt and uncle's house and you found a note that your cousin had written down that said, there was a ghost in my room, you wouldn't be like, oh shit, maybe there's a ghost in there. You'd be like, well,
it's like maybe the kid needs therapy, but sure.
Yeah, because you would be like, okay, ghosts aren't real. Somebody, there's a kid messing around, and that's like, that's something that you actually have to like do the work to get across to the player in a game. It's like, no, these are just like kids messing around. This is just a house that has people in it. The stuff that's interesting about it is like who these people are and what's going on in the house, not like, so when's that ghost going to show up?
Exactly. That was the way I played Gone Home for the first time. It was way after it had already gotten the Game of the Year awards and all that. But somehow I'd managed to not read anything about it before starting it. And starting the game up, thunderstorms, locked off house with all the lights turned off. There's not a soul inside, and something.
Every single horror trope, you're conditioned to think that it's all going to be horrible.
Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. It's a dark and stormy night in an old abandoned mansion. Like, yeah, it's all there.
and the first time I picked up something, I think it was a toilet roll from the first bathroom on the bottom floor. And
that sounds like you, yeah.
Am I gonna have to throw this at something? Is the monster really gonna get scared if I just chuck a bog roll at it and such? It really. And I was, it was 2 a.m. When I played it, and I was done about 4 a.m. And I was like on my toes for the first 30 minutes or so, thinking, I don't want to turn on the lights. Something's going to at the end of the hallway looking at me. And then whenever you pick up a scrap of paper, the music just sort of fades in. This soft piano music that, again, tropes and such has conditioned us to think everything's all right for the time being. You can relax.
Yeah. Oh, it's a game from the Serena guys again.
But yeah, so literally the first 30 minutes of playing, I was going, oh shit, I hate stealth, I hate hiding from monsters and such. And gradually it becomes very obvious you're not going to be hiding from anything except perhaps your own predispositions, but that's about it.
Yeah. And that was a big part of, I don't know, it was a weird, how do I put this? There's a lot of there are a lot of different factors kind of involved, where I think that one of the big things that that my perspective was when we started making the game is, making Gone Home was really it was a reaction to, in a lot of ways, the time that our team had spent working on the BioShock series. So we haven't mentioned it on this podcast, but I was a level designer on BioShock 2 and BioShock Infinite, and I was
Oh, I love that one.
And we completely forgot to mention all your credentials. We just went straight to Gone Home.
Yeah, it's all good. But coming off of working on the BioShock series for a long time, we were kind of looking at it. Well, I mean, a long time, a few years. But I was looking at it in terms of basically we want to take BioShock and remove the combat from it and have the experience be completely about being in the environment and exploring it and finding audio diaries and finding environmental storytelling and having that be the entire focus of the game. And the thing that I think I was very conscious of was if there's no tension and if there's no urgency to the experience, then I think it could, or my concern at the time was that it could feel very, it would be easy for the player not to have like a connection to what's going on. Like if you're playing it and you're like, well, I guess I can look at some stuff, I don't know. Then
kind of
there's not that
lack of motivation.
Yeah, exactly. To really engage. And so, one focus was saying, how do we have players feel that tension and that urgency and that feeling of like, oh, I need to find out what happens next. I need to find my sister and like unlock this other part of the house and everything. And so part of it was starting from a place of saying, okay, we'll make it seem like something isn't right here. We'll make it seem like you don't really know what kind of situation you're stepping into at the beginning, and that uncertainty will hopefully draw you in long enough to kind of get past the point of needing to have that sort of like almost, like that scary tension to drive you forward to the point where you can get invested enough to be like, oh, okay, well, now I'm playing just because I want to know more about these people,
Yeah.
But I never wanted it to be like a twist fake out, like, haha, you thought it was going to be scary, but it isn't. It was more of like a tool of saying, you don't know where this is starting from. You don't know if it's going to end well or badly or what you're going to run into. But hopefully that experience of really kind of discovering that over time is satisfying, as opposed to, if you do say like, if it does feel like you're like, well, I was promised a horror game where I got to run away from monsters and it wasn't that at all, and it feels unsatisfying, then that's like the bad version of what we were trying to do.
And it happens kind of gradually, I thought. I mean, when you get to the ending, which is in every positive sense of the word an anticlimax, then you've
Is there a positive word? No, never mind.
I thought it was a very positive kind of...
Every positive sense of the word, a disappointment.
Well, okay, let me put it in another way. It is a climax, but more emotionally. It's not like some big action climax. It would have been... I would say it would have been a cop out to have like the corpse of the one of the either person in the basement or up in the attic or whatever. But what happens is you reach an emotional climax and then it ends. But there's not like a major end game. Dr. Eggman doesn't fly down in a flying saucer or some shit.
Right. Well, and you don't. The story doesn't end out with you finding like, and there was a serial killer all along. Oh no, it doesn't have a big kind of like explosive splash of an ending in that sense. Yeah.
Actually, it has a relief. At least for me, it did. My first clue that I was not going to be chased by monsters was the music cue when you pick up scraps of paper. So that was my motivation, because I thought at any moment now, as long as I keep picking up scraps of paper, I'm safe. That lilting piano music will come in. I'll be safe. And then gradually I realized, okay, no monster is actually going to appear. But near the end, and by the way, we can spoil shit on this podcast because we're assholes like that.
Also, the game's been out for like 3 and something years.
There's that too, and every single person on the planet.
Yeah, pause the podcast and go play it and come back.
If you haven't played it yet, then shame on you.
Oh yeah, that too. But anyway, by the end, I was dead sure that once the attic would open up, I was going to walk into like a murder-suicide thing or something awful, something god-awful. And I think most people had that same sort of, oh no, please don't be that, please don't be that.
Yeah,
and
the horror is people. It's not the ghosts. We're the bad guys because we've driven these people to suicide. But no, yeah, I thought that element of it was.
Yeah, because there is an element of stigmatization. Is that even a word, or is it just stigma, second language? But being stigmatized for your sexuality, and in fact, I would say that's another thing where I thought, well, this is kind of countercultural, isn't it? I mean, the way that you treat a romantic same-sex relationship is totally against. I mean, this is all before Overwatch went along and did it too, right? But I mean, at that point where I played it, I guess, and I'm not alone in this, so I know I can say it, and I feel it's absolutely horrible. But I mean, most men probably know about lesbian love relationships that have a wah-wah guitar in the background. So that's kind of the reference point.
That was a very curt way of saying it, actually.
And also the fact that it was set in the past as well had that kind of element of, oh, this is the 90s, maybe it wouldn't be as acceptable as it is today. So that was a clue that it might go badly. And
right. No, I mean, I think that. So, what we were going for overall, just in story terms and like the experiential terms, is to say, everybody has their own stories that they're incredibly invested in. Like your life and my life and anybody that you see on the street has this has their whole story of their life that is incredibly important to them.
Except Gareth, who is dead inside.
I am very much.
This is human soundboard. But
I'm not going to live down to expectations.
and I respect them. But so what we thought was this game, the ability of the game is to give you access to all of the details of these people's lives and to kind of make this not a statement necessarily, but to like acknowledge that if you can get to know someone deeply and personally, then their mundane story of just like what their life is can be something that you can connect to and that can mean something to you just by knowing those people better. And so, everything you find in Gone Home is about, who is this person? Now I know more about them, and really feeling like you can relate to them as an individual. And so within that, if there is this character that is grappling with, a same-sex relationship and what her family and, the people at school and everybody else might think about it, and just navigating those waters, if the game can show you that experience through the eyes of an individual that you feel like you actually get to know as someone, that you could meet on the street, maybe that gives people who haven't lived through that experience, myself included, obviously, like I had to do a lot of research and kind of get to know people who have really lived through this stuff to be able to try to do a good job representing it. But if that can be translated into a form where people can kind of feel like they've gotten close to someone who is like a specific person that has lived through that, and not just kind of this abstraction, of like, I think I know this, that, or that about what this kind of experience is like, but actually to kind of almost get to know someone who is living those experiences, then maybe that's something that I guess at least is a unique kind of perspective to gain, hopefully, as a player.
I will say that worked a charm, because for me, I've told this story before, but I was in a complete daze after having completed Gone Home for 4 days in a daze. That's a hard sentence to get out.
You guys are doing with this English as a second language thing, though. I mean, that's a complex distinction. You did it.
Oh yeah, Frederick and I have it as a second language, and Gareth somewhat as a second language, being that he's British.
Well, Gareth has European as a second language.
Oh, come on! It's too soon. It's still too soon.
But anyway, what I wanted to get at was. So it seems like the whole circumventing expectations was a very deliberate attempt on your part to get people invested in the story, to have some sort of urgency at the start so that the player would feel motivated to explore the house and then uncover this microcosm story. I guess we can call it that.
Sure. And some of it was even just some work that we had to do for practical reasons, because like the fact that you're in a big sprawling mansion is actually just a design, like it was a requirement of how I wanted to design the levels. Like, like a suburban open plan kind of much more compact house isn't really conducive to the kind of like moving down halls and room to room and kind of stringing out a story through this space. So it was like, okay, a big Victorian mansion, it'll have to be more in that shape. And then we needed you not to be able to go outside. So we're like, okay, it's in the middle of the night and there's a rainstorm outside, and we're like, okay, well now it's a dark and stormy night in a Victorian mansion, and so like the
Peter Cushing's off to the side reading this aloud. It was a dark and stormy night.
Yeah, exactly. And so the tropes kind of came to us, and so at that point when you're doing those things, and like we needed to have like the phones and TVs not work, so there had to be like a thunderstorm that like make the phones be out and stuff. So at the point where you have happened into that circumstance, you have to basically acknowledge like, okay, so we're starting with this, like this is what the player is going to encounter regardless of the reasons for it. And so now we have to like work against that to get to what we want it to actually be about, because if we just ignore it or whatever, then then we aren't going to be doing our jobs to kind of acknowledge to the player, yes, we know what you're seeing, but here's what the game is really about.
Speaking of the way you designed the place, did you ever consider whether some people played it and expected something that was more in line with what you did for the BioShock games?
Like in what sense?
Well, like in the sense that there's going to be combat, or I mean, BioShock Infinite was heavily praised for its story, which I also love. I haven't made it all the way to the end of it, but I hope I will. I'm playing it on my PS3 and my TV's broke.
You're all excuses.
We don't have any electricity.
I watched a Let's Play of it, like at least the first 5 minutes of it.
Oh, good. So his electricity is working.
No, I've played most of it, but I just kind of thought it had these big sprawling spaces and this fast-paced combat, like moving you around on rails in the sky and that. Did you consider whether some players just bought the game and thought that's the thing we're gonna get because I recognize these names there?
Well, we did try putting skylines in the house, but it was just way too cramped to be able to really. So, like, we had to cut that. But after that point, we were just like, okay, no combat. I don't know. I like on the one hand, we were very upfront about like no combat, no puzzles. Like on Steam, when you're making your Steam page, there's a section to put features, and it's basically the place where they want you to put bullet points of how many levels there are, or like whatever
number of polygons,
right? But just stuff like like with a BioShock game, it would be like explore the city, under the sea or whatever.
Basically anything you'd put on the back of a physical box back in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
10 hours of gameplay.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, 200 hours of gameplay. No two playthroughs are the same. Whatever.
And motherfuckers with flamethrowers.
Well, I want to play the game where that's one of the bullet points. They only have like 4 bullet points, and one of them is big motherfuckers with flamethrowers.
Well, I think you could reasonably have put that as a bullet point for BioShock Infinite, but that's just me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm just gonna put it out there. Exclusive Backseat Designers next Fullbright game will have the bullet point big motherfuckers with flamethrowers on the Steam page. That was us, people.
I was gonna say that might be a little libel in that one.
I mean, I want to play the game, but that's just the title.
Yeah, exactly.
You could always make BioShock big motherfuckers with flamethrowers.
That's just the subtitle of the next BioShock game. But anyway, so I think one of the bullet points on our Steam page is like no combat, no puzzles, explore a house to find the story or whatever, because we wanted to make it clear to people. It's like, okay, this isn't like Myst where you're gonna have to do some cool, exciting puzzles. This isn't like even Amnesia.
That's the first time you've heard a compliment about Myst on this show.
But I mean, we totally felt like if people were like, oh, this is going to be like a puzzle game, this is going to be even like Amnesia where I'm going to be running away from monsters or something. We just want to be like, nope, it's super not about that. If that's what you're looking for, we're sorry. This is not the place to go.
And yet people got their panties in a twist somehow.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess... I
guess no one reads the Steam bullet points. I didn't. I thought it was booting up an adventure game, and then I saw the mansion. I thought, oh fuck, this is one of those stealthy kind of things I have to hide from shit, and it was none of those.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that was kind of hard, especially at the time, is like there weren't a lot of games where it was like you walk around and find stuff and that's the whole game. Like Dear Esther was basically that. But there wasn't a whole lot that you could point to that it's like that game. So we just kind of had to describe like, okay, here's what it's not like. Here's some like stuff that is like in the game also. I don't know. Hope you like it. I
guess for better or worse, Gone Home along with Dear Esther kind kind of what were the genesis of what is now known as walking simulators, which is an awful term for a type of game that I really, really, really enjoy. Because one of the reasons I don't play games like Amnesia or BioShock, for that matter, sorry to say, is because I have a miserable trigger finger and a lot of anxiety problems when I play games like that. That's why I play adventure games, because I can get up, walk away from it, take a deep breath, come back, sit down, and the game won't have moved an inch while I was away.
It's also a very literate experience, I thought, when I played through it first by myself, and then watching Trolls play it when we did a BSD plays on it, which was our failed awful Let's Play experiment. But did it fail because you got too drunk while you were playing it? Is that the implication that I
basically
yes, mainly that.
So I have one piece of feedback then on how you can make it more successful in the future.
Thank you. We'll take that into consideration.
But I mean, there is even sort of superficially, there is an emotional complexity to it. But when you start moving down the layers, so to speak, there are all these kinds of subtexts. I mean, why is the dad acting like he is? What did he experience in his past? What's going on in the mom's private life? All these things that aren't spelled out, but you can kind of piece not a complete jigsaw puzzle together, but you have a lot of different pieces there that form this incredibly coherent image of what's going on in this family.
And I think that's one of the things that computer games can do that maybe other art forms can do, but it becomes problematic. I mean, for instance, you wouldn't be able to get most of that kind of backstory and side stuff and the nuance into a film. But you probably could in a book, but it would end up making the book feel bloated, and you might be reading through the book thinking, why do I need to know this? I want to get onto this bit. Whereas by putting it into this kind of not haunted Victorian mansion, you get the opportunity to explore that story if you want to, and you discover little bits of it, so that if one little thread kind of interests you, you can go down looking at, is the mother maybe having an affair with this guy? Or you can completely ignore that if that's not what interests you. And that's one of the really good things about the game, I think.
Yeah, you actually get to shape your own image of what's going on here by, dodging past some stuff and then going way deep into other stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things that sorry, I'll let you speak in a minute, Mr. Gaynor.
No, we're not paying for that.
No. One of the things that set me off wanting to play Gone Home with Fred was that one of the criticisms that Gone Home got was that it was way too short, and I was like, well, it took me 4 hours to play the first time, and that's because I wanted to see everything. And then after I played it, I went off and watched a Let's Play of it, and he uncovered a bunch more shit that I hadn't found. So I think Fred said something like, well, it was over in 2 or 3 hours, and I liked it, but I didn't think it was that amazing.
That's true. That's true.
And I sort of wanted to shove that in his face and go, well, there's a ton of more shit you haven't seen yet. And I just threw Fred under the bus there, didn't I?
well, I would be the first to admit that I'd gotten that completely wrong. And I think underneath all the drunkenness, what you can see in that failed Let's Play is that I'm actually more and more amazed by how much stuff there is in there as we go along.
The part of it, I think, is the comparison that you're making to like other forms of media is Gone Home is really the player's role is to be kind of an active interpreter of what they're finding, and when you're reading a book or watching a film, there totally may be small connections and allusions and references back to things that you might encounter but not really perceive as having relevance. And then maybe you reread the book and you're like, oh, when she saw that thing earlier, that's that thing they were talking about later, and like having that context allows you to build more connections between what is there. But I think that the additional layer in Gone Home is saying also just what you find and what goes in front of your eyes, and also what order you find those things in is actually an active, like, dynamic part of the experience, above and beyond simply, interpreting the information that you receive in the order that's presented in the book or in the film, or take your pick.
Yeah, exactly. You can walk off and then just like Fred said, and we've also had this discussion many times on the podcast before. You probably haven't listened to those.
Of course he hasn't.
Nor should you.
But the whole strength of game playing versus just reading a book or watching a film is that you're not just passively receiving information. You're actually asked to go out and actively find it on your own, which is something that we really want more games to acknowledge, that you're not just being led on a string, which is one of the things that I found very interesting about Gone Home, is that it does very subtly lead you on a string with certain doors being locked off and such, but you never feel like it's shoving you, now go down here, now this is your mission objective. It's kind of just nudging you in the right direction and then leaning back and going, all right, what do you want to do next? How hard is it to sort of shape a narrative? In the sense, well, the first clipping that you pick up obviously sets off the story with the sister. She's leaving all this stuff behind. But then the player is really free to explore the downstairs area pretty much on their own terms, except for the locked off kitchen bit. Structuring the narrative, I mean, do they go upstairs first? Do they stay on the downstairs? How do you structure a narrative like that and keep them moving in the right direction?
Well, a big part of what made that possible, the way that we were building it, was the fact that that we did have this big Victorian manor that we can the art of level design in a lot of ways is knowing what your level layout is going to communicate to the player, and therefore having a fairly reliable idea of what they will probably do, and then also an idea of like, okay, but if they don't do that, what could they do, and how do we make all of that valid? You
have been eaten by a Gru. Game over.
You can always just like jib them and say reload your game. That's an option.
Space Wars.
But so we were able to say, if the player goes into the West Hall, they are probably going to walk down the hall and go in each door in the order that they encounter it. Like we might not know whether you're going to go into the West Hall first or go upstairs first, but whichever of those two options you choose, we're pretty sure that you're probably going to go into the hallway closet and then the dad's office and then the library and then the TV room and then the music room and then to the end of the hall, if you go into the West Hall at all, because it's really uncommon that somebody would go into the West Hall and then like skip 3 doors and go to the last door and then come back, etc.
So that's why no doors are directly facing each other. They're always like spaced a little apart.
Exactly.
I never noticed that until now. Clever.
Yep.
You subverted our expectations.
Yes. We're going to get back to that at some point.
And so it's similar, if you go upstairs, we can say you're probably going to go here, then here, then here, and then get to the end of it. And so, that's honestly one of the only really branching pieces of content in the player flow of the game. Like past that beginning point, there isn't a whole lot of, well, you're going to go into the West Hall or up the stairs. Again, it's more, okay, you're going to go into the basement, then you're going to go into the East Hall, then you're going to go into the attic. But, with that first part, the consideration is kind of, if you start downstairs, you're starting chronologically at the beginning of the story. But then if you go upstairs, you're starting the story at the beginning of the point where Sam and Lonnie start hanging out and like spending time together. And then you do the upstairs part. And when you go back downstairs, you're really kind of like filling in the backstory that led to the stuff you've already seen. So it kind of adds up to a whole. But pardon me. Yeah, some of it is the actual physical layout, and some of it is like, yeah, this door is locked, so we can set things up so that we can say we're pretty darn sure you're going to have been motivated to explore all of the space that is available before that locked door by the time you get the key for it, so that you aren't like, oh, I've only been through half of this stuff, but I just got the key for the basement, so wait, should I go there? Should I stay here? It's more like, we'll hopefully use the tools of level design to say, you've had a full satisfying experience at this point, and the last thing that happens to you is you get the key to the next area, and then that is the thing that says, well, I should go there next, and you move on with the experience.
That was a good noise, Fred.
I'm still getting used to this pipe.
So what seems quite interesting then is that there's a sort of and I'm speaking perhaps here as an academic, which nobody else will be interested in, but is there
an academic who knows what a caveat is? An
academic that knows what a caveat is and is...
I know what caviar is!
And is cowering in his bedroom because of Brexit. But is there a sort of a psychology to that game makers are aware of in players, or is it more of a sort of an intuition type thing?
I think that part of the psychology aspect of it is there's a few different aspects of that. So one part of like level designer psychology is in a game like Gone Home, where so much of the experience is about the light and dark in the house. Our version of knowing where players are going to go is based partly on light sources, but there's always something like that in a game. And so some of that is, how you drive things as a level designer. So for us...
Big flashing light. Move towards the light, dumbass.
All players are basically fruit flies.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of true. Like, a really good way to show the player that there is an exit from the space they're in is just to shoot some light in through it. And you're like, oh, there's light coming from over there. I can go there.
But thanks for the cross blowing out the light bulb, by the way. I nearly shat myself when that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're going to turn out the light on me, are you? Yeah.
Great moment.
I trolled you.
Oh, hello.
Copyright.
But in Gone Home, when you go into a room, it's dark, and so you're looking around, and you want to find lamps, you want to find light switches, etc. In a shooter game, it might be like there's ammo on a table or something, but there's always stuff that you're like, the player will want to go to that. And so if there's important other stuff, you can use that knowledge to pair those things together. So, in Gone Home, there's a lot of information that's totally optional, where it's like, if you never see this, that, or the other thing in the game, that is, kind of a side concern is fine if you don't see it. But we don't want players to miss, like, the important audio diaries that tell Sam's story so that you'll be able to understand what happened by the end. So we could totally say, you go into this room, and then there's a lamp on the table, and we're going to put the really important object next to the lamp, because we know the player's going to go to the lamp to turn it on, and they're going to click the thing that's next to it, and we can be pretty confident they're going to not miss that, and then everything else kind of filters out from that. But the other side of it is there really is a difference, I think, between experienced players' psychology and how they build up their behavior based on the expectations that they have gained for like how games work or how they should behave as a player of games, versus people who are more naive about the conventions. So like, something
glad you went down that road. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, something that's really interesting about the downstairs hall versus upstairs thing is that what we found was people who are more experienced gamers were much more likely to come into the downstairs hall, see the foyer, the entryway of the house, see the stairs going up, be like, okay, there's stairs up there. Then be like, okay, but I need to like scrub all the corners of the entry hall to make sure I didn't miss anything, and that ends them up finding the exit that goes to the West Hall, and then they end up going in. So they end up starting the game at the beginning of the story because they've said, yeah, there's big stairs. I'll bank that. I need to, make sure I don't miss any loot in this room first. And then by that point, the stairs have kind of gone out of their head. So when they get to the West Hall exit, they go that way and that. But players who are more naive, who haven't played, a bunch of games that might actually have like loot and resources you don't want to miss, kind of go in, they look around, and they were much more likely to be like, oh, there's big stairs there. Maybe I'll see what's upstairs. And it was really interesting to see how those conventions being internalized affected the way that players related to the spaces and the stuff that they were finding in Gone Home.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm guessing that Gone Home is one of those, because I've been trying to push Gone Home on a number of people who don't necessarily play that many games. People who still have this idea that games is something where you jump on mushrooms' heads and stuff like that. And I'm trying to tell them, there's a oh, good, more copyright. If people who have this idea that the games are like children's toys and no cohesive, interesting narrative could ever come out of a computer game. When I can kind of sense that people are like that, I try to thrust Gone Home at them, because it's not a challenging game, but it's a game that has a deep and rich story. At least I think it does.
And it's very important that you thrust it.
Yes, there must be thrusting. Thrusting is important. And they usually I've observed one or two, and they usually do the what you said, going upstairs, because they feel like, okay, we're entering a world now and we have to explore it. Not necessarily I have to stick around and click on everything and make sure what this does. I mean, I have people who walked straight past the answering machine that gives the very first audio thing, like play for an hour and only then realized, oh shit, I can turn on the answering machine. Cool.
Right.
Yeah, there wasn't a question in there. No.
Okay. No, I mean that's really cool that you've gotten to see more people that have less experience actually see how they engage with it. And it's something that kind of exposed my own biases, because that's not something I had thought about. Like I made the beginning of the story start in the downstairs hall because my natural tendency, the way that the whatever designer intent there was, okay, the player will come into the entryway, they'll look around, and then they'll do the downstairs first and go upstairs. And maybe if my biases worked a different way, I would have been in a space where I would say, okay, well, I assume people will go upstairs first, so I'll make the story start there, and blah blah blah. But I hadn't really even thought about kind of where those impulses came from until I saw how people played the game itself.
It's actually very interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, I'm agreeing with you, Fred. I mean, one of the interesting things about that is that I suppose because games are a sort of a very popular medium, but not everybody has played them. I mean, there are certain conventions to do with the way that films are presented or the way that novels are written. I mean, the novel had to be invented, and the Hollywood style of film is not the only way of doing cinema. But we've got such a cultural awareness of what a novel is or what a film is that virtually anybody of conscious age knows what a novel is and knows what a film is, and can they'll go in understanding what the rules are about what they're seeing. Whereas with a computer game, it's not quite the same.
And an end.
And you're harping on Aristotle. Frederick has the most massive boner whenever someone brings up Aristotelian philosophy.
I mean, it's really important.
Weird. It's a weird fetish. Dude.
It's important for me to note that no, I don't literally.
I thought I just heard a bang on the table. No.
No, I just wanted to. I do agree with you, Gareth, completely. But what I wanted to note earlier was just a little. Well, you know way more than me. You are a doctor after all, and you've got to trust people with titles. But what I wanted to.
And stuff. Also the title of the Mr. Bean for the modern age.
Yeah, famous last words. You have to trust people with titles. What I just wanted to say was that I find it very, very interesting that we started off this episode by saying we're going to talk about subverting player expectations. Now we're talking about expectations to the players. So that's a pretty interesting way to turn it around.
And also, we're subverting podcast listeners' expectations because we're not talking about that shit at all.
Well, we've done that for a while.
Actually, I did want to kind of bring it around and maybe look a bit beyond Gone Home, although I could happily talk about that. Until Cows Come Home and all those bovines that keep getting away from me. But, other games that have, because you must have had some inspiration from other games that have done like a similar thing with subverting expectations. Some of it was, unintentional or just because of certain things in your game, as you've explained. But some of it must have been intentional as well. Can you name any examples of games that circumvented your expectations that had that kind of light bulb? So that's what I'm doing.
I think that probably Silent Hill 2 is a good example. And I think that in that case, in some weird ways, it's actually kind of more directly relevant than you might think. But like, Silent Hill 1 was a horror game, and it was a psychological horror game, but I feel like Silent Hill 2 was really the point where, as you played it, the dawning on the player of kind of what the story is really about and what all of the imagery you've been seeing in the game has been about, and you just didn't have context for it until you got more of the story. And then kind of the degree to which it was revealed what a small and personal story the game really was about, and that the rest of the game was representing.
And oh my god, I'm playing an asshole.
Yes, also James is a dick. But that kind of taking a game that is a much larger production and has combat and has an inventory and has puzzles and is a horror game, and then the reveal kind of being more about what the implications of all of that stuff is, and that the implications are like very personal scale to these individual characters. I think was really powerful, and also felt like one of those legitimate subversions where it's not like, haha, and the twist was, you were dead all along.
Like Shyamalan.
Right.
His head goes toasty.
Yeah, you're not getting M-nighted. You're just sort of like, oh wow, there's like
hashtag M-nighted.
But just like realizing that there are these layers to the thing that you're experiencing that add to it, and that kind of are revealed to you over time, I thought is probably one really powerful example of that.
Yeah,
it's actually a very good point about M. Night Shish Kebab. I don't know how to pronounce his name anyway, but most moments in games that
racist? I
subvert.
can't tell.
No,
It was a little bit.
I'm just really tired of his films.
I got M Nighted by Mr. Bean. So.
Oh, well played. You can have a. Yeah, now let poor Pete Townsend get out of the closet. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that
yeah, I was going to say that might be a little libel in that one.
What you brought up there does illuminate that most of these moments in games and other forms of media are kind of inherently M. Night-ish. And I'll bring up one that I really enjoyed, but which does kind of have that quality to it, which was in Batman Arkham Asylum, when the game appears to glitch because Batman has been exposed to Scarecrow's fear toxin. And that was actually so convincing to me that I wound up restarting my console. So I had to backtrack a bit. But I mean, I guess what surprised me about that is you don't expect a Batman game to break the fourth wall. I mean, you do expect some intense moments, but never in my life did I see that coming. But
you never saw the 60s Batman?
There's like this big pow popping up on the screen.
The 60s Batman was one big acid trip. There's no...
It was great.
But I guess that is kind of like a cheap M. Night cliche to pull, but subverting my expectations with the kind of emotional depth and complexity that Gone Home does, I haven't really experienced in any other games. That was just like one example of a brief scene that does it, to my mind anyway. Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's one of those things where if you're gonna put a twist, like a very M. Night-ish twist in a game, I think you have to be.
I love that. How so? Sorry to interrupt. I love how that's a thing now.
Oh, it is.
We're gonna make a film, and it's going to be so M. Night-ish. We're gonna have people quoting the plot twist 10 years on.
No, that's going to be the second Steam bullet point under big motherfuckers with flamethrowers.
It's all
prepare to be M. Nighted.
But sorry. Coming from working on BioShock, where like there's a big like classic, like Usual Suspects, Sixth Sense kind of twist at the heart of the original BioShock, and then in Minerva's Den, which I was the writer and lead designer of, there was also a big like identity twist moment of like, oh, you were that guy all along, which is like, that's cool that's a legitimate thing to do if it's your plan and if you build it in a way that feels earned and feels totally, legitimate and meaningful. But it is also something where I think that the cautionary tale of the actual M Night is like, you can't pull that trick very many times in a row, because the whole point of a twist is that people don't see it coming, right? And so if you're like, oh, it's that guy that does a twist every time, you're like, okay, so what's the twist? I'm thinking about the twist. Oh, that was the twist. That's fine. Like the surprise is what makes it meaningful. And so from my perspective with Gone Home and with, what we're doing with Tacoma, I explicitly don't want there to be, I don't want to say we're going to pull that trick again. There's going to be this one big moment that flips the light switch and there's your twist. But hopefully in some ways that can force you to make what's interesting about the story be maybe, in some ways more subtle than one big moment. But it's still kind of hard.
I would say the big twist in Gone Home, though, is in its tone, and you only really get it in the final seconds of the game. I mean, there's at no point have you been really sort of properly misled about what's going to happen. It's only in retrospect. It's only as you're playing it, the tone then completely changes in the final seconds, which I think gives the ending more weight than perhaps it might have done otherwise. But I mean, like you said, if you're using that as a game mechanic as well, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. But I suppose the general point is it was incredibly well done. So I think you got away with it.
I mean,
I agree.
I would much rather. So from my perspective, like, I'm totally happy with it, with the kind of resolution of what the tone of the story is and what the meaning of the overall story is, feeling like it's a kind of final reveal moment. Like, that's cool. But like, very explicitly while we were making the game, I said, like, I never want Sam being gay to be like a twist. Like, you're like, oh, like that would be like such a cheap, like undermining, I think, of like the subject matter. I wanted to be like, her, orientation is part of what you're discovering over the course of the game, but it's also addressed in a very kind of like straightforwardly acknowledged over time as part of the experience, and not like having that be a big like reveal moment. Because I think that if you're
I think you find out before she does.
Things. Yeah, sure.
In a kind of retroactive sense, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with the way it's put together, I mean, you understand that she's falling for the girl that she's falling for before she makes the realization herself, in terms of the order that you discover the documents. So it doesn't come across as a twist to me. To me anyway, it doesn't come across as a twist.
Yeah. And so I don't think I think that we achieved making that feel like authentic and not like a cheap twist moment. And that kind of frees up the rest of the experience to be what that kind of weight of like, oh, how's this really going to turn out? What's really going on here to be about?
Yeah.
It also feels a lot more complex and human than, well, there is kind of a trend right now to make game characters that are really full-fledged, but I mean, it is well, I said
audacity.
I said, yeah, we want Doom Guy back. Well, anyway, what I was going to say,
Doom Guy back last year. It was good too.
That's true.
But he was so deep and meaningful and soliloquy-like, and
that's true.
He had a pet kitten, and it was not the Doom Guy I remember.
It was a rabbit. Anyway, what I wanted to point out is that it's a very human experience, I think. I mean, there are probably many, many people who've tried that in real life. You will learn something about yourself way later than everyone else, because there are always these kind of things about you that kind of gave away that you're this kind of person before you even noticed. So it's a very human story as well. And again, not that many games at that point at least were. I feel, there are more and more of them, and I think that's brilliant, because storytelling is basically part of the human experience.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Things to add there.
Yeah.
Go play it.
We were really happy to be. I was excited to be friends with Jake and Sean from Campo Santo, who at the time when we started working on Gone Home were the leads of the first season of the Walking Dead game at Telltale, and playing the first season of Walking Dead and seeing how much that game really was strongest when it was about the relationships between the characters and who they were as individuals and how that reflected on their actions. That was like and to see how strongly people connected to that was really encouraging to us, because that those games were coming out while we were kind of early in development of Gone Home, and between that and other games that were sort of pointing in that direction, and then seeing what those guys have now done with Firewatch last year, and how that became even more the focus of the entire game, being about the relationship between these two characters and how it relates to what you're finding in the world and everything. There's been I think, this kind of big development of people acknowledging that games have the tools to expand on that aspect of human experience in a way that that players will actually get on board for and be excited about, and that is really, really cool to see.
I think in terms of human experience thing, one of the powerful things that games can do that other forms of media can't is actually put you in the shoes of the person playing, that you're not just watching someone else going through the story, but you're actually an active participant, which gives me an excuse to bring in my example of a game that subverts expectations other than Gone Home, which was Undertale. Which definitely, first of all, I think it's part of the bullet point list, but you can go through the entire game without killing a single monster, or you can kill every goddamn monster that so much as sniffs at you, and the game will shape itself accordingly. But moreover than that, it also M. Nights you a little bit once you figure out, and again, spoiler, that the character you named at the start is not the character you're playing. It's actually a character.
Oh, I haven't played it yet.
Oh, fuck off. I told you there was a spoiler warning.
Yeah, well, that was meant for the listeners of the show, not me. Oh, never mind.
Well, you know better than to listen to me then.
I would say that I sometimes care about plot twists, but the really meaningful ones, as opposed to the M. Night ones, it doesn't really matter for me to have them spelled out. And even if I walked into Gone Home knowing what the resolution was going to be to this whole story, getting there is also part of the experience. And that's definitely a bigger part of the experience than the few final seconds of it.
But what I wanted to get at with Undertale was that the circumvention of expectation is that you go into an RPG and, if you've played an RPG before, your human brain is conditioned that, okay, we must kill monsters, we must get a posse, and we must go off and kill more monsters, and eventually a very big monster will appear, and then I have won the game.
Or a big motherfucker with a big motherfucking flamethrower.
Just getting that Peggy rating right up there. But in Undertale, you actually start to feel bad for the monsters when you realize that if you're going around killing all these monsters, they actually have personality and relationships, and some of them you can even befriend if you go the pacifist route and all of this stuff. Yeah. So it actually starts to reflect on you as a person, how you play this game, rather than just, okay, I'm just fucking off playing an RPG here. Yeah. So I thought that was, I don't really know where to go from there. I just thought Undertale, what a great example of circumventing your expectations.
Well, and I was impressed with that early in the game. Very early in the game, there's hold on, sorry. Okay. Very early in the game, there's the intro section is where you meet. So I played the beginning of Undertale. I played probably the first 2 hours of it, and I haven't finished it, and it's been a while.
Whoops! But, sorry for spoiling that for you too.
It's all right. But the character that you meet in the intro, you end up fighting at the end of the intro, and it's sort of the place where it introduces you to the idea of you can just do combat, but then also there's the pacifist route. And I think probably for a lot of people, they have the experience that I had, which was you don't realize how that works at first, and you just do combat towards this character, and you end up killing them, and then the stuff that happens when you kill them makes you realize, like, wait, maybe I didn't want to do that. Is there another way to do this? And so you load your game to try to do it a different way. And when you load your game, the like flower character appears and is like, okay, you loaded your game, but then says you're trying to undo what you did. But we still know, like you can't escape it. And then they let you try it again. But that sort of subversion of like, oh, I did something I don't like, I'll just load my game and make it go away. And then the game saying, we know what you're doing, and it's not going to work this time. I thought was really surprising and very memorable. And taking it to that level of both just like what's in the game and what the tropes of the actual experience are, and going deeper than that to subverting how you think save load works.
Exactly. Really cool. I mean, there's even a way to completely fuck up the ending if you go on one route. I'm not going to spoil that for you, but if you go one route and do something, then if you're trying to start the game from scratch again, it will remember and it'll actually log off one of the endings. You can't actually get to it until you reinstall the game. So he really went above and beyond that. We seem to have lost our compatriots due to technical difficulties while we were having.
He doesn't have electricity at his place after all.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the hamster must need recharging.
His TV's broken. His internet's broken.
Oh, I could fix them with sticky tape.
Oh, that's what you get for saying the M word too many times in a row.
You got
someone had, I got M knighted. NSA didn't like that.
You got M knighted in the A.
There's some angry guy at Microsoft going, but I like the Sixth Sense. Don't disconnect the fucker.
We just came to a mutual conclusion that since your technical difficulties booted you off, we were just utterly bored and decided to end the show. So you've actually just caught us at wrap-up time.
Oh, brilliant. Well, don't mind me.
Unless you have anything you wanted to ask our good friend Steve. I can call you a friend, right?
I don't believe I do, except to say that this has been a really illuminating conversation for me, and it's been incredibly entertaining and I think educational. And I think there's we like to think that people who listen to this show are way better at making games than we are, but I think there is a lot that
way better humans than us.
Yeah, well, definitely that. The other thing is just wishful thinking, but the other is truth. But I think if there are any aspiring game developers listening to this, or established game developers even, first of all, why are you listening to us? Second of all, rewind this and listen to it again. There's a lot to take away from it.
You'll see other twists coming.
That's true. You'll be able to put all those pieces together.
Yeah, the subtext. Ooh, yeah.
Spoiler alert: Bruce Willis is dead.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Fred was disconnected all along.
Neighbors are calling the police.
Oh, well played.
But yeah, if you are a game developer or an aspiring game developer, a little bit of self-promotion is I did a podcast a couple of years ago called Tone Control, which is at idlethumbs.net/tone control, where I interviewed a bunch of other game developers about their work. And I talked to Jonathan Blow and Tim Schafer and just dozens of, I think there were 14 interviews that I did. I talked to Brendan Chung, who at the time was working on Quadrilateral Cowboy. And anyway, so it's sort of developer to developer interviews. If you're looking for more of that kind of stuff, you can go to idlethumbs.net/tone control, and hopefully there's some interesting shit to learn from those discussions as well.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely. If you want a better version of this podcast, go to iTunes.
Exactly.
So well, if we're gonna name drop better podcasts, we'll be here all night.
Yeah, I was actually going to turn the mic over and have you plug something. I imagine you also have another game in the works. I think you mentioned the title earlier, and we just sort of ignored it for some reason.
Yeah,
Tacoma?
we're working on Tacoma, which is our follow-up to Gone Home. It's it sort of, the experiential base is, it comes from a similar place as Gone Home, where you're exploring an environment and finding things, but it takes place on a space station where the events that happen in the crew's lives on the station are captured in these 3D video recordings that you encounter. And so a big part of discovering the story is sort of moving through these recordings of events and adding that up to what you're finding in the environment and coming away with a full picture of what happened on Tacoma Station. So we're working on that now. It should be out later this year.
Spoiler, they found a gateway to hell. Oh wait, that was Event Horizon. Sorry.
There could be a secret passage under the doormat, but we didn't have time.
God bless you, Virginia. Sweet Virginia.
Gareth, any parting words?
Well, nothing to plug, but this is...
but your wife does.
I hope the guests we have for the rest of the series are as good as this, because we got in some really, really good conversations. And that subverted my expectations, because I had very low expectations going into it.
You're British, yes. You always do.
Steve, we're very thankful that you can string together sentences and keep Gareth entertained. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Good job.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the first episode of season 4, and here's to a great rest of your season.
Oh, thank you so much. And if you would like to tune into more of this season, please go to our website at backseatdesigners.com, where you can subscribe to the show, and you can also watch it on YouTube if you're a weird person who likes to do that, over on youtube.com/backseatdesigners. We also have a Patreon account, or well, it's called an account, isn't it? Basically, it's Fred's drug money. And,
the big account.
Yes, the big account. It's where Fred buys all his things. Anyway, patreon.com/backseatdesigners. And we also have a Facebook group where you can chime in and poke at us. Facebook.com/group/backseatdesigners. And are you tired of this ending spiel yet? Well, fuck you, because there's one more thing. We are also on Twitter at BS Designers, which is cool because it kind of sounds like bullshit designers, which is becoming increasingly more apt. But anyway, that was the outro spiel. Once again, since Fred and Gareth have already given you a little tongue bathing there, allow me to present you with one of my own. Steve, absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on our show and enlightening us. And from a personal perspective, what a pleasure to finally meet the person who made me not be able to masturbate for 4 days straight because it was such an emotional.
What the fuck?
Peggy 18.
Well, that's a steep bullet point.
That's a steep bullet point.
That's a twist.
I just M Nighted everyone.
Wait, how can you go 4 days? Anyway, this is not going on the recording.
I was so emotionally weighted, I could not get erect.
Jesus.
And we have now killed Gareth. So on that bombshell, we'll see you, if there are anyone still listening, in episode 2. Thank you so much for tuning in.
No more for today.